Good day, and thank you for taking the time today to watch this workshop. And thank you for attending the Risk 2020 conference. My name is Michiel de Lepper, and I am a channel technical manager within McAfee. And today, I will be telling you a story. And this is an EDR story, a story about MVISION EDR. And in this story, I take the place of a junior analyst, fresh out of college, fresh into the job, and I've just settled in with my new employer, and I've gotten a position in the SOC. And that day, I get a phone call. And the phone call is from John Butter. And John can't open his documents. So, let's have a closer look at who John Butter is. John Butter is a senior accountant within my organization. And John really loves soccer. Every Friday, all of his attentions are aimed towards his favorite team. John is also very anxious about data loss. So every day, he backs up his files into a cloud service. Now, a few minutes before John's call to the SOC, MVISION EDR already picked up a possible threat in the environment. It's a low-risk threat, and it's called skygo.exe. And we have different points of view in the dashboard. We can see threats by ranking, techniques observed, and process activity, for instance. And this gives me a very good starting point to see what is happening. When we look at the techniques observed, these are related to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So for instance, we can see here execution, we can see discovery and defense evasion. And these types of classifications can really help a security team to better understand the stages of a particular attack. The summary view gives us the information that it started with skygo.exe and then kicked off a whoami, PowerShell, and some strange executable. We can see the process ID, the user account, jbutter, and the time it took place, 10:31 a.m. SkyGo looks like a very common application that TV providers offer, and it gives everyone the ability to watch TV online. Of course, whoami is just a tool found on both Microsoft and Linux, and basically can provide the name of the logged-on user. PowerShell is routinely used in enterprise environments, but due to its very powerful functions, it's also popular with bad actors. So let's move a little bit closer and let's look at the sequential view to give us a better understanding of what happens. And here we can see clearly that whoami and PowerShell are being detonated by skygo.exe. And when we look a little bit further, we also see that a strange process is being triggered by skygo.exe. So what do we know about skygo.exe? Well, when we dive into this, we get more details. We see what kind of command line it uses. We see its name and hashes. We see when it was created and last modified, its size. We see its user info. So right from the get-go, I do get a lot of information that may or may not be useful to me. But what I'm particularly interested in this case is the hash. So let's take that hash and fill it into VirusTotal and see if something comes out of this. But no luck, sadly. There's no match on VirusTotal, so we have to dig deeper. PowerShell has been used to run a script, highlighted here on the right. However, don't forget, I'm just a junior analyst, and I really don't know how to read a PowerShell script. So I'm going to skip this for now. And that strange process that we saw created a lot of noise. It started off with a Windows registry key. And after that, we can see a train of file operations. Well, that's kind of suspicious. So once again, I check the hash. It's unknown. Okay. So the exe is located in a temp folder. And it has been created at 10:31 that Friday morning. And we got a Windows registry key that's created. And then a file named proclit was created inside the temporary folder. Okay, why would an exe create a file in a temporary folder? But that file looks really, really interesting because it's created at 10:32. But when I look further, I see that it's also deleted at 10:33. So why would someone create and delete a file inside a temporary folder every single minute? It's definitely strange behavior. And the last part of the file train involves the files that John can't access anymore. Let's have a look at the time view. And the time view within the process activity provides us with a much better view of the time range of the possible incident. And it all happened between 10:30 and 10:50 on that Friday morning. The table gives us all of the information in the table view. And we can also confirm here that that strange process had access to those files that are now corrupted. Okay, let's take some notes now. So John Butter said his documents aren't accessible. We also know that John Butter ran skygo.exe from the download folder. Skygo.exe checked the current username and then executes a PowerShell and that strange process. And that strange process, with that process ID, ran from a temporary folder. And it created a file named proc.lib and deleted the same file every single minute. Proc.lib is also located in the temporary folder. And that strange process accessed the files located in the documents folder of jbutter. So this is my first set of notes. Now it's time to really dive into the details. So I think I now know enough that there's something suspicious going on. So I open an investigation. And doing that, it allows me to collect all of the information relating to John's machine. And MVISION EDR currently has been able to collect 1,433 artifacts relating to John's machine. And in this very center of artifacts, what you see here, we see John's machine. But by leveraging artificial intelligence, MVISION EDR is able to reduce this number of artifacts to 577 main ones. Compare that to the 1,433. That's not so bad. That's a significant decrease in the amount of artifacts that are important to me and where I need to look at. But now think about how long it would take to do this in a manual process, and what skills and knowledge would be required for this. Me as a junior analyst certainly would not be able to actually whittle all of this information down. I would need to get one of the analysts or even a senior analyst involved in order to do something like this. So now that I have a number of key indicators, I can use those to focus the rest of my investigation on. For example, the system has identified a number of hacking tools running on John's machine. And I also see some uncommon processes and some sockets being opened by processes that normally do not do that. So on the left side of the guided investigation, MVISION EDR can guide me through questions and answers based on the key findings of the investigation. And when we look at the artifacts discovered and the key artifacts, we see that we have 11 key findings. 11 key findings is something that I can manage. I can look into this. So let's look at processes with a sign of malicious usage. Okay, PowerShell. I know what PowerShell is, but I didn't really know that it could be used in a malicious way. And remember here, I'm just a junior analyst fresh out of college. I'm basically learning from this tool. So I'm not an expert at PowerShell scripting, far from it. But if there's something malicious here, it's better to take some notes. For example, I do recognize an IP address. So I take note of this IP address because it might be important in the next part of my investigation. Okay, admin or hacking tools running on the device. So there's whoami, CMD, there's ipconfig. So let's check with the IT team if there were some operations going on during that Friday morning. Because I don't really see any reason why someone like John Butter, who's a senior accountant, would run a command like whoami. Some of the IT teams maybe, but John Butter as a user, he wouldn't be. He wouldn't be running whoami. So next up, I look at processes running from suspicious directories. And here I see that strange process that I saw earlier again. Now, this is a good indicator here. MVISION EDR also suggests that there are substrings which are not commonly seen in Windows. And the executable path is app data, which is known to be suspicious. Okay. So now I'm thinking I need to focus maybe on that strange process that I've seen pop up a few times now. The reason John cannot access his files is probably because of this process. So I need to discover that. So when we display the trace of this process, it allows me to have a much better view of what happened. So the first thing I did was create a registry key. This is basically a way of gaining persistence. So why should a piece of software that's living inside a temporary folder have persistence? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is a very important indicator to discover if other machines have been impacted by this as well. So let's move to the real-time search mode, where we can drive the investigation by using specific information. So I want to know if that key value that I've just discovered is also present on other machines. So here I can now confirm that Financial 05 is the only machine that has that key value, which is John's machine. So I'll make note of its IP address since it might be useful later. But before I continue with anything else, I'm going to delete that key. If something malicious is going on, I don't want it to happen the next time I reboot that machine. So that key is now deleted. So now I'm going to look where else skygo.exe is present. What other machines in my environment have skygo.exe? So I now discover that not only John Butler's machine has this, but one other machine as well, called HR14. Okay, so I got two machines with SkyGo.exe. So MVISION EDR can also tell me the name of the logged in user that interacted with SkyGo.exe. And in this case, it's been Mark Bean. And Mark Bean is an employee who works in the HR department. So it makes sense that he's behind that machine. Now, are there any other files that contain SkyGo in the environment? So let's look for any files where the file name contains SkyGo. And well, here we go. We got skygo.zip and we got skygo.exe, two different paths. So let's take an action. Let's delete them and take some notes here. And what about that strange process? So with this query, we can see that it's only located on John's machine. But why? A copy of SkyGo was found on two machines. So there must be something about John's machine that allowed the process to detonate. Maybe it was the who am I that was related to John's machine. In any case, nothing good is related to its actions. So I'm going to delete that strange process as well. Best to be sure. So I've taken a couple of actions, so let's review what we've discovered so far. We've discovered that only one machine reported infection, that PowerShell.exe had malicious intent, and that admin tools have been run on John's machine this morning. And that strange process that we saw is definitely suspicious. The Windows registry key for that strange process was found on the machine Financial05, which is John's machine. And I've deleted that registry off John's machine. SkyGo.exe, however, was found on two machines. Financial05, which is John's machine, and HR14, which is Mark Bean's machine. And I've deleted SkyGo.exe of both machines. And that strange process was also found on only one machine, Financial05, John's machine. But to be sure, I've deleted that from the machine as well. What are we missing? We are missing something here. Well, what we're missing is how SkyGo.exe has actually entered the environment. And by correlating browser history, we discover that John visited clickforthebest/skygo.z and downloaded the skygo.z file from there. If you remember, we found skygo.exe both in John's machine and Mark's in HR. So how did SkyGo jump from one machine to the other? With a very simple query, we can actually look at the network flow without having to involve the networking team in requesting that. And interestingly enough, port TCP 445 was used during that time frame. And port 445 is generally used by SMB, so basically shared folders. So could it be that John moved a copy of sky.exe to a shared folder and asked Mark to run the software? Interestingly enough, we see that traffic between John and Mark that morning also involved port 445. So part of our investigation now is to see if our strange process actually opened communications throughout the network. And we see that from John's machine, there were specific communications to two IP addresses, both port 443 and port 80, so HTTPS and HTTP. Filtering on only port 80, we see that there is a communication every minute. And when we filter on port 443, we now see that it's not every minute, but there's still regular traffic in that same window of time. So we do need to consider that within our investigation. And focusing on the historical search, under detections and alerts, we can see our strange process and its process ID. And under DNS requests, we can see two specific calls by the same process ID. One to that website we discovered earlier, so click for the best. But there's another one to GitHub. That is very strange. And by analyzing this, we can overlap the time of the proc.lib file that has been created and deleted and the DNS query. And there's a match. The DNS call is right in the middle of that window of time. So there should be a relationship there. So I'm going to take my final notes now before handing it over to a senior analyst. And those final notes would be John Butter, username jbutter, downloaded skygo.zip, which contains skygo.exe. The files had been downloaded from Click for the Best on Friday morning. And after execution, skygo.exe checked the username and opened a connection to a certain IP address by using PowerShell. After it detonated, the strange process was created and it corrupted all of the files in the document folder. John copied the file also to a shared folder in Mark's workstation. At this point, Mark ran it from his machine, but the second stage of skygo.exe didn't actually detonate. In the second stage of skygo.exe in John's machine, we saw a continuous connections to GitHub and Click for the Best. And that strange process created and deleted a file in a temporary folder named proc.lib. And it did so every minute. So why are those connections there? And what was the role of proc.lib in that scenario? So this would be something that a junior analyst can fully do by leveraging MVISION EDR. And only after the junior analyst has done all of this, he or she can then forward it over to a senior analyst to really start to investigate. So by leveraging MVISION EDR and its capabilities and its ability to offer a guided investigation, you actually enable a junior analyst. And you enable them to do more within their time frame and within their job roles. Thus, you're taking away the legwork that a senior analyst would normally do. And you don't hire a senior analyst to do legwork. Senior analysts have a very unique set of skills. And you want to leverage them as effectively as possible because senior analysts in general are expensive. So you want to optimize their use and their use of time. So you enable your less skilled SOC analysts to do more, whereas your senior analysts can focus on the things that are important for their job role. So with that, I quickly like to walk through the solution. So what we actually did in this scenario. So SkyGo.exe was a malicious software zipped and hosted on Click for the Best. Once it was deployed on John's machine, it tried to open a reverse share to an external IP address. But for some specific reason, it couldn't succeed. There was an error in the code. But there was a plan B. SkyGo.exe copied itself into the temporary folder, changing its hash and its name. Basically, it transformed itself into that strange process that we saw during our investigation. It became persistent, and it checked a remote flag on GitHub. And the role of that flag was to remotely orchestrate the attack. And on GitHub, there was also a key to encrypt documents folder on John's machine. And our strange process was also copying the content of John's clipboard every 60 seconds, buffering it and the content to a file called proc.lib, and sending the data back to Click for the Best. Once John copied over his credentials of his personal account into the clipboard, the attacker turned off the attack, since they now had the credentials. And when John copied over the file into the shared folder and Mark downloaded this and ran it, nothing happened. And that is due to the who am I failing and not detecting John Potter as a user. So this was a very sophisticated targeted attack. The attacker specifically went after John Potter as a senior accountant and the information that John has on his system. And the attacker also took into account the fact that certain things fail. So he or she created a backup plan, that plan B, where SkyGo.exe changed itself and became that strange process that we saw. And all of this information was visible in MVISION EDR. And all of this information was captured by a junior analyst. Now, thankfully, all of this is a complete and fictional scenario. And we've set this up for your benefit. However, when we look what we see into the wild, this is scarily accurate. These things are happening. And I think the best example of the power of MVISION EDR is its ability to whittle down those 1,433 artifacts to 11 key findings. Asking questions, answering them. And from that follows more questions and searching for those answers again. Giving you and your organization the ability to focus and prioritize where you need to in an investigation. So with that, my time is up. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something from this and that it was useful to instead have a product pitch. See MVISION EDR as it will be used in the hands of a SOC organization. Sadly, I can't be there this year due to the obvious reasons of travel restrictions and COVID-19. But I sincerely hope that next year for Risk 2021, I can be there in person again. But for now, thank you very much. Please do stop by our virtual booth. Have a chat with us. We're here to answer any questions that you may have. And most of all, even though this event is virtual, enjoy it. because everyone at Real Security has put an enormous amount of effort into this. And like every other year, they hit it out of the park again. So enjoy the event. Thank you. And do come to us. Talk to us, and we're here to help. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day.